Welcome to the Pro Show. I'm Rick Machle from Rockin' Media. We have a great show for you today. We're talking about front range market trends and the pros and cons of HOAs. We also have some great properties for sale. That's next on the Pro Show. Showing your property at its best online is one of the first of many important steps to getting your home sold. At Rockin' Media, we provide you with the best quality photos taken by staff photographers, not contractors, who process your photos individually. We use our proprietary Flash HDR process, which combines the natural look of HDR with the color accuracy of Flash, along with properly exposed windows. Rockin' Media's HDR process is clearly exceptional. Find out more and schedule online at rockinmedia.com. Well, joining us today are 5 awesome agents from around the metro area and up north. And the first one is Carrie Holmes. She was on a previous show. She's up in the Fort Collins north of the metro area. Then we have Debbie Jacobs from the metro area, Lori Delaney from the North Metro area, Don Zalfa from Evergreen, Conifer, and West Side. And finally, we have Debbie Haining from the metro area. Hi, Debbie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Rick, and hello to everyone on the show. Yes, I'm Debbie Haining. I work in mostly the South Metro area, Lone Tree, Greenwood Village, Castle Rock, Castle Pines. And I have been a realtor for, I believe it's 14 years. I've been with Coldwell Banker the entire time. And I mostly work in the luxury area. However, I do a lot of first-time home buyers and that. And I'm a little bit of a real estate nerd because I love reading about real estate.
Well, that's awesome. Last week, we talked a little bit about the metro area and what happened in July. And today we are going to have Carrie bring us up to speed on what's going on up north in the metro area, north of the metro area, up toward the state line in the Fort Collins area. What's going on up there, Carrie?
Hello, Rick and everybody. So yes, looking at northern Colorado, we really encompass 2 counties. So we have Larimer County and Weld County. I like to equate it to west of I-25 is Larimer County, east is Weld, and that's a generality for you. So today, focusing on Larimer County, looking at July statistics, we've got a median sales price of $575,000. Our list price to sales price is 98.6%. Our average days on market is 42 for July, and then closed homes are actually up 1.6%. So we're looking forward to going into the next month, and we'll keep you posted.
That's awesome. And Lori, a little bit further south, you have some little more direct stats on what's going on there. What's going on?
So for the Broomfield, Westminster area, the average price of single family homes is now up to 725,934 to be exact in just those 2 cities. I do kind of work the whole Northwest corridor, but I pulled those. And then just so you can kind of compare it to attached dwellings, townhomes, condos, the average price of those for Broomfield, Westminster is $453,543. So we are seeing a lot more movement, I think, in the market as inventory is improving and buyers are out there again wanting to get to their next destination.
Well, that's cool. And here is the info graphic that comes from the Denver Metro Association of Realtors. We see the close price is down to an even $600,000 for the metro area, just slightly different from the month before. Closed homes is down 5.19%, and the sales volume is down 6.4% to 2.63 billion. The months of inventory is up to 2.86 months. That's up 2%, almost 3% from the previous month. And the median days in the MLS is up 15% month over month to 15 days. The active listings is also up 3.62% to 10,500. New listings are down, which is interesting, which means those people looking to sell probably want to get on the market. And then pending sales is also down. And so, Debbie Jacobs, I think you have some more granular stats as well on what's going on in the metro area, kind of in the southeast part.
Sure. So one of the neighborhoods that I focus on is called Cherry Creek Vista South. It is in the southeast corridor of near Centennial and Inglewood and Greenwood Village. And there's 622 homes in this particular neighborhood. And I had the opportunity to really drill down and look at the numbers year over year. So in 2023, there were 15 homes that were closed in that particular neighborhood. And in 2024, there's just been 11 homes that have sold in that neighborhood. But what I found most interesting is the median price went from $312 per square foot. Let me kind of back up to that in 2023. And we did see a price reduction overall from year to year for a price per square foot of $308 a square foot. But what I thought was the most interesting about that statistic is the days on market last year were, especially at the end of the year, were very slow. So we had some of those properties that were on the market for 150 days or more. And so this year, what I'm seeing is that the average days on market are 35. So it's increased, dramatically from 2022, but 35 is still a little bit less than the average. And the median in that particular neighborhood runs at about 1.1.
Okay.
There was one kind of outlier that closed over approximately 1.6, I believe. So that particular neighborhood doesn't have any multifamily properties that are available. So it does represent a specific single family home neighborhood.
And today's mortgage advice comes to us from Nancy Alexander from Guaranteed Rate. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Rick, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me. She's with Guaranteed Rate. However, Guaranteed Rate is not sponsoring this program. So tell me, Nancy, last week we talked about locking your rate. This week we're talking about buying down the rate. Why would you want to do it? I think we used to do it a long, long time ago when I bought my first house, but we haven't had to exercise this muscle very much. So tell me, what does that mean?
Well, as always, Rick, you asked the good questions. So buying down your rate, remember when you're doing an interest rate, you're starting with market rate. Okay, market rate just meaning you're not paying anything for it and you're not getting anything for it. In other words, you're not getting any lender credit for it. So you start with market rate and you say, for example, let's say it's 7% today. And let's say you can buy it down by a half a point.
Mm-hmm.
So you can buy it down to 6.75. You remember this, Rick, because
Right.
we didn't used to get a rate unless we paid for it, right?
Right.
But now we have the choice to pay for the rate or not pay for the rate. Again, to not pay for it is market, to pay for it is to buy a discount point or more. Just think of this. A discount point will cost you 1% of your loan amount.
Okay.
So if we say the loan amount is $500,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? So discount point is going to be $5,000.
Do I get a point off my interest rate then?
Oh, that's a good question. Right now, you're getting about a half a point.
So I pay a point to get half a point. Okay.
You pay a point to get half a point. Yes.
Okay. And so now if the interest rate was 7, now I'm getting 6.5 on that rate.
Correct.
But I'm paying a full point, or $5,000 in our scenario of 500,000, to get that discount. So
Correct.
it seems like the time it would take, there's cost to that. So let's just say as a buyer, I'm going to do it because I really want that 6.5 rate for some reason. There's a cost to me of that of $5,000. So now how do I recoup that?
Well, so you recoup it by your years, right? Your
Okay.
years of investment. So in other words, take your dollar amount it costs you, in this case, 5,000 in our example, and you're going to divide in your savings of 7, what your principal and interest would be at 7, and
Okay.
what it's going to be at 6.5. So let's call that $200.
Okay.
Okay. Let's say your break even is going to hit you at about 2.5 years.
Okay.
So if you stay in that rate and stay in that house for that 2.5 years, you've now paid for that $5,000 you paid up front. Does that make sense?
It does. But if rates, let's just say, go to 6 and you go, I want to refinance to 6, and that happens a year after you get your loan, you're taking that difference and you've just overspent because you're going to have to
That's
pay
right.
again to refi typically, correct?
That's right. And so you've got to ask yourself, where do you want your dollars to go as being the consumer, right? Do you want them to go into the rate? You know that you've got closing costs that you have to pay, right? Those are lender fees that you have to pay for closing. You've got your prepaids, which are your escrows. Now, if you're buying points, is that where you want to put your money when possibly, like you said, Rick, you've got to refinance in your future? So is it the best place to put your dollars? And think about your investment. What if you took that 5,000 and you invested it in a stock, a bond,
Right.
and you had the compound effect of money? Would you be further along with putting your money in a different investment versus buying your rate?
And unfortunately, all of these things are unknowns because if the stock market goes down or the stock you bought goes down, then you aren't ahead. But so, it may just be a comfort feeling to know, yeah, I'm at 6.5. I didn't pay the full 7. Do homeowners that are trying to sell their house in this market also pay to buy down the rate?
Well, sure. In fact, another great question, because homeowners, if they want to incentivize these buyers, right, then they can throw dollars out there and say they're willing to put out 5,000, 10,000, whatever it may be, for a buyer's closing cost. Does that or can it include a point, a portion of a point? Absolutely, it can. So all of this are pieces to the puzzle, right? It comes into the mix.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we are all hearing that essentially builders are doing this a lot to move their homes. They're paying down a lot more than typically half a point. They're buying down a whole lot more, correct?
Absolutely, that is correct. They're taking what used to be their incentives of, washer, dryer, put a fence in, put in lawn maintenance, right? And they're now taking that money and buying the points. Are we as the consumer ultimately paying for it? Sure we are. I mean, nothing is free. It's just where the dollar's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. And so and of course, even in this market, we're hearing they're doing both. They're putting in the fence, they're giving you the dishwasher, and they're giving a better rate. And that's costing them. And, well, hopefully this is clear to everybody. It's not an easy concept to understand. And nobody, like I said, nobody's had to deal with it for quite a while. So hopefully this helps you. And if you have further questions about this, feel free to give Nancy a call. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Nancy. And today's mortgage advice comes to us from Nancy Alexander from Guaranteed Rate. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Rick, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me. She's with Guaranteed Rate. However, Guaranteed Rate is not sponsoring this program. So tell me, Nancy, last week we talked about locking your rate. This week we're talking about buying down the rate. Why would you want to do it? I think we used to do it a long, long time ago when I bought my first house, but we haven't had to exercise this muscle very much. So tell me, what does that mean?
Well, as always, Rick, you asked the good questions. So buying down your rate, remember when you're doing an interest rate, you're starting with market rate. Okay, market rate just meaning you're not paying anything for it and you're not getting anything for it. In other words, you're not getting any lender credit for it. So you start with market rate and you say, for example, let's say it's 7% today. And let's say you can buy it down by a half a point.
Mm-hmm.
So you can buy it down to 6.75. You remember this, Rick, because
Right.
We didn't used to get a rate unless we paid for it, right?
Right.
But now we have the choice to pay for the rate or not pay for the rate. Again, to not pay for it is market, to pay for it is to buy a discount point or more. Just think of this. A discount point will cost you 1% of your loan amount.
Okay.
So if we say loan amount is 500,000, right? So discount point is going to be $5,000.
Do I get a point off my interest rate then?
Oh, that's a good question. Right now, you're getting about a half a point.
So I pay a point to get half a point. Okay.
You pay a point to get half a point. Yes.
Okay. And so now if the interest rate was 7, now I'm getting 6.5 on that rate.
Correct.
But I'm paying a full point, or $5,000 in our scenario of 500,000, to get that discount. So it seems like the time it would take, there's cost to that. So let's just say as a buyer, I'm going to do it because I really want that 6.5 rate for some reason. There's a cost to me of that, of $5,000. So now how do I recoup that?
Well, so you recoup it by your years, right? Your years of investment. So in other words, take your dollar amount it costs you, in this case, 5,000 in our example, and you're going to divide in your savings of 7, what your principal and interest would be at 7, and what it's going to be at 6.5. So let's call that $200.
Okay.
Okay. Let's say your break even is going to hit you at about 2.5 years.
Okay.
So if you stay in that rate and stay in that house for that 2.5 years, you've now paid for that $5,000 you paid up front. Does that make sense?
It does. But if rates, let's just say, go to 6, and you go, I want to refinance to 6, and that happens a year after you get your loan, you're taking that difference and you've just overspent. Because you're going to have to pay again to refi typically, correct?
That's right. And so you've got to ask yourself, where do you want your dollars to go as being the consumer, right? Do you want them to go into the rate? You know that you've got closing costs that you have to pay, right? Those are lender fees that you have to pay for closing. You've got your prepaids, which are your escrows. Now, if you're buying points, is that where you want to put your money when possibly, like you said, Rick, you've got to refinance in your future? So is it the best place to put your dollars? And think about your investment. What if you took that 5,000 and you invested it in a stock, a bond,
Right.
and you had the compound effect of money? Would you be further along with putting your money in a different investment versus buying your rate?
And unfortunately, all of these things are unknowns, because if the stock market goes down or the stock you bought goes down, then you aren't ahead. But so, it may just be a comfort feeling to know, yeah, I'm at 6.5. I didn't pay the full 7. Do homeowners that are trying to sell their house in this market also pay to buy down the rate?
Well, sure. In fact, another great question, because homeowners, if they want to incentivize these buyers, right, then they can throw dollars out there and say they're willing to put out 5,000, 10,000, whatever it may be, for a buyer's closing costs. Does that, or can it include a point, a portion of a point? Absolutely, it can. So all of this are pieces to the puzzle, right? It comes into the mix.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we are all hearing that essentially builders are doing this a lot to move their homes. They're paying down a lot more than typically half a point. They're buying down a whole lot more, correct?
Absolutely, that is correct. They're taking what used to be their incentives of, washer, dryer, put a fence in, put in lawn maintenance, right? And they're now taking that money and buying the points. Are we as the consumer ultimately paying for it? Sure we are. I mean, nothing is free. It's just where the dollar's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. And so and of course, even in this market, we're hearing they're doing both. They're putting in the fence, they're giving you the dishwasher, and they're giving a better rate. And that's costing them. And, but well, hopefully this is clear to everybody. It's not an easy concept to understand. And nobody, like I said, nobody's had to deal with it for quite a while. So hopefully this helps you. And if you have further questions about this, feel free to give Nancy a call. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Nancy. Have a drop in interest rates last week, which is great for the housing market. It went down to 6.47% on an average 30-year fixed rate, is down from a peak of 7.79% back in October of last year. So that's great news. So it probably will help with, even though the average price isn't going down, obviously affordability must be going up. What are you guys seeing out there as well as Dawn? Are you seeing more buyers, or is it still fairly slow like we were talking about last week?
The last probably 3 weeks have really picked up. It's been encouraging. That's pretty indicative here in the mountains. Usually June is super slow, but it seems like after 4th of July, things kind of kicked up a bit. Slowly, though. It wasn't like a super push where everybody was knocking down the doors to get in, but it was definitely a gradual and much needed push, especially for my sellers who are getting a little discouraged.
Right. Debbie Haining, what are you seeing?
I'm also seeing it start to pick up a little bit. Homes were staying on the market just a little bit longer over the past few weeks. I don't think that this recent interest rate change has done much yet, but hopefully it gets some people moving forward.
Anybody else seeing anything different?
Just a great dawn in that about the last 3 weeks, the market has gradually picked up, and I kind of look at it as delayed because it was a little slower than we anticipated for May and June. And then it seemed like it just kind of started up again, after 4th of July, which is typically when we can see a lull because vacations are taken then before kids go back to school. So I'm cautiously encouraged, and just had an open house and had a lot of traffic the last 2 weekends at my open house with a lot of buyers.
Well, that's great. We'll talk more about what's going on in the... Oh, Carrie?
I just wanted to jump in here, Rick. Northern Colorado. So we are a college town here in Fort Collins. So we'd have had that lull. A lot of kids going back to school, and I kind of find the end of summer, like Lori said, there's a lot of vacations happening. So actually I'm projecting that sales are going to increase here in September will be kind of the beginning. There's a lot of seasonality up here. So fall is actually a really great time to buy and sell here in Northern Colorado.
Other than May, September is my favorite month anyway. It's a great month to get out and just look at homes, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
Well, the weather is definitely beautiful here then, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We have seasons up here, so the middle to the end of September is the most beautiful time up here in the mountains.
And joining us today is Greg Batchelor from Real Property Management. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Rick, how are you?
I'm doing well. And you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So what is going on in the rental market? What are rates doing? What are occupancies, vacancies? What's going on there?
Yeah, great questions on a lot of fronts. So we'll start from top to bottom on that. So first off, we are seeing vacancy rates go up in many different areas. And really what's driving that is there are more properties that are turning into rental properties, and that's oversaturating our market just a bit. And obviously when you have more supply than you have demand, there's only one place that rental prices can go, and that's down. And so we're beginning to see that. Obviously, just like in any part of real estate, whether that's the buy-sell side or this rental side, there are certain areas that have more inventory than others. Right now, for instance, we are seeing a flood of properties come onto the rental market in Castle Rock. Don't know what the intrigue is there so much, but there are a lot of folks who are choosing to rent their properties in Castle Rock. We are seeing similar Frederick and Firestone lot of rental properties coming on certain portions of our Colorado Springs market. There's a development in Colorado Springs called Lorson Ranch. We are seeing lots of new inventory in the Lorson Ranch area. So just like any other part of real estate, rental real estate is very area specific. Are there still areas where there's demand that is high? Absolutely. For instance, rental properties, some of the higher end ones are having some more allure right now in Castle Rock with the BMW Golf Championship coming into town. That's driving some short-term rentals and other options that are there. Interestingly enough, from a vacancy standpoint, we're starting to see a growing delta between single-family homes and townhomes and then condos. So on the single-family home side, in most areas, we're seeing vacancy rates in the 4 to 5%, which is a bump up from the 2 to 3% that we have seen. The interesting part, though, is we're beginning to see on the condo side of things vacancy rates that are bumping on 8 to 10%, which is very similar to what we're seeing on a lot of apartments, any of the multifamily side of it. They're reporting a lot of numbers that are pushing in the 8 to 10% range as well.
And if I'm a landlord and I'm say I'm renting my house, what does that mean to me? Do I need to start being a little less aggressive on rate, or what should I be doing at this point?
Yeah, it's a great question. We just have had some tough conversations with a couple of our owners today that it's really going to be important, especially in these areas where there's just an oversaturation of rental properties. You're going to have to be so price conscious and borderline even price aggressive to get the price points where they need to be to where the market would say, yep, this makes sense relative to all the other competing properties that you're dealing with.
So I'm guessing that one of the advantages you bring to your landlords or even the tenants is your knowledge of the market and how to price. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I'm so proud of our leasing team. They did an amazing job. As a matter of fact, last month leased almost 90 properties in the month of July alone. They just did an amazing job. And that does not come without local market expertise from Colorado Springs here in the Denver area, up in our northern Colorado market. It's very, very important to have that knowledge. And we do, just given the number of properties that we manage, and our team just does a great job of helping our landlords make sure that we get those properties priced right so they'll rent.
And I assume it's harder for landlords to figure this out on their own because there isn't like an MLS necessarily that shows what it is, correct? Or what they should be charging for a 2,000 square foot home.
Yep, totally true. And we do see a lot of that. As a matter of fact, a lot of individual landlords will just pop out to Zillow and go, oh, well, my Zestimate says X, and so therefore I want to get X. Well, that's an average number. Those are median numbers going out across all marketplaces. And so having local market knowledge like what we have in the Colorado Springs area, Denver area, northern Colorado, it helps our landlords a ton.
Like a lot of agents, I hear all day long, just don't pay attention to the Zestimate. It just is. It's usually wrong. It's so wrong. And not only is it not only city dependent, neighborhood dependent, but also probably it's also dependent on how, down to the street level, isn't it?
Which it is absolutely the case. There's a principle in real estate that has held true for so long that there's three primary levers when you're looking at real estate, which is number one, the location of the property. Well, the property is where it is, but the same home that is built in Highlands Ranch, for instance, built in Aurora, built in Thornton, those could all rent at very different prices based on that particular location. Could be the exact same house. The second component is the condition of the property.
Sure.
So you could have those same three houses in the same three spaces, but one has no upgrades, one has moderate upgrades, and one has, for instance, Brazilian cherry hardwood floors and matching cabinets. Well, that's going to rent very, very differently, even though it's the same house. And then the third lever after condition is the price point.
Sure.
So that's one of the levers that is the easiest one to navigate with, because it's impossible to change the location of a home. You can't physically pick it up and move it someplace else. You can make modifications to the home to change the condition, but then obviously the price point is just the lever that is most easily pushed and navigated to make sure that you're getting that particular home at the right price.
I think 4, 5, and 6 are location, 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 aren't they?
It's totally true. Very accurate.
Well, this has been great. Next week we might talk about, I know we've got something to talk about. What do you want to talk about next week?
Yeah, next week we'll talk some more about rental regulations in the city and county of Denver.
Okay.
There's a number of investors out there that have missed some windows to get the registration process done. So we'll chat more about that, and we'll get that out in the marketplace.
Perfect. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, Greg. If you want to get a hold of him, you can give him a call here on the number on the screen. And appreciate your time again this week, and we'll see you next week. The pros and cons for this week are talking about HOAs. So who wants to jump into HOAs or homeowners associations? And let's talk about the good things, because obviously I think there'll probably be a longer area talking about the cons on this topic. But tell me a little bit, maybe Debbie Jacobs, about what you see are some of the pros of the homeowners associations, or one or two.
Sure. So I like a property that has a homeowners association within reason. So the pros that I see is that if there's a particular property that is not being taken care of, that can really drag down the property values around the surrounding homes, the homes surrounding that home. So a HOA that is proactive, that can talk a little bit about paint colors and make sure that the lawns are watered, that type of thing, does, in my opinion, raise the values around the entire neighborhood. So that's one of the pros I see.
I think the statistics show that it does keep the home values higher than non-association areas, but obviously, what are some of the other pros? Anybody jump in here? Dawn, I know you really want to talk pros about HOAs.
Up here in the mountains, it definitely keeps for good neighbors. Sometimes up here in the mountains, people collect a lot of things in their yards, and with an HOA that doesn't happen. A lot of folks that move up to the mountains do not want an HOA. They want to be able to do what they want on their property. They want to be able to shoot on their property. And my husband and I grappled with that when we moved up here. He was very insistent on an HOA, and I was definitely leaning towards an HOA. Living up here now, I definitely would. I definitely would tout the merits of an HOA. However, as long as they're not super, super restrictive. In my neighborhood, we have 25 parcels, and the majority of them are 10 acres. And we have a private road. So the majority of our association responsibility is for the maintenance of the roads and snow removal. That being said, you still have some people who can't get along and play nicely. So that's why I'm the president of my association. So you definitely have power struggles. I would say, so ours is called a POA, a Property Owners Association.
Mm-hmm.
My recommendations for folks, especially with my buyers buying into a POA, we want to make sure that the reserves and the financials are adequate. I've had some situations where there's not adequate HOAs, and either the HOA has gone into bankruptcy or there was a judgment levied against them that puts a constraint on selling the property. It has to be a cash buyer at that point. So we have to make sure that the finances and the reserves are adequate in the event there is a special assessment. And also we want to make sure that the folks that are buying in have additional insurance that will cover any special.
Okay, well, that's awesome. And yes, Carrie.
I think it's important that we also differentiate between HOAs for like a condo or a townhome versus an HOA versus a single family home.
Okay.
An HOA for a condo and a townhome actually covers a lot. So you are getting a lot of value. A lot of times the exterior of the building's taken care of. Sometimes water and sewers included. Insurance is a lot of time included, plus, maintaining the exterior of the building, including painting, sometimes roofs. So you are getting a lot for your money. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind in that condo townhome subset. And then obviously you've got the single family where the HOA is typically a lot less, and it just covers things like management of the community. Like we said, if you have that governing body, if somebody's not maintaining their property, you have somebody, an enforcing body there. A lot of times they manage green belts and open spaces. And again, that price is a lot less. So I think they definitely have different aspects. Both are of value.
Debbie Haining, are you finding that most of the HOAs are managed by community members? I see a lot online where people are talking about they kind of outsource the HOA to a company that will manage it. And what are you seeing out there within your communities?
Generally, it's a combination of both. The HOA is managed by homeowners, but they are overseen by the property management company.
Okay.
I see that both in single family and also in multifamily. I think that if you have a good property management company overseeing, it makes the daily efforts for the homeowners and the rules and things they have to go by a lot easier. And then I'm going to also add, as a realtor, it's much easier when you're working with an HOA or a property management company that is more responsive when you go to sell the home. I think all of us would agree that, sometimes you run across a property management company that is not easy to access the tools, the documents, and everything you need for the sale. And that can kind of be difficult.
Lori, what do you see are some of the pros?
Actually live in a townhome community. And what I love is I'm never home. And when I do have time off, I'm traveling. So I love that, I don't own a lawnmower. In the winter, I don't own a shovel. All that is handled by the HOA. Yes, you do pay for it, but it does, like Carrie had said, it covers the outside structure, it covers the roof, it covers the water and sewer, trash and recycle. So by the time you take all that out, it really isn't as much as you might imagine for an attached dwelling. You share in the cost of insurance, which right now I think everybody is seeing it go up after we've had some of the natural disasters. So that I think is a positive because it's shared by for 200 people in my community instead of just a burden being on one. And the cost of replacing a roof on a single family, it's up to $30,000 these days. So anyway, I think it's very advantageous when you have an HOA that can manage the community. And I will say, just to kind of piggyback on what Debbie said, there's actually a board that's usually volunteer basis. These people are working other jobs or retired. And there's a board for the community that interfaces with the community manager. And then once a month, you have the entire community involved and invited to those meetings. You get their input. But I think it's very advantageous to have a community manager just to connect the dots and get in bids if there's work that needs to be done in a neighborhood and that kind of thing. So I also definitely think that an HOA preserves the values of those homes in the community.
So there are pros, obviously, and of course, then that leaves us to the cons. And it would seem like if you have a board that might be a little aggressive, I guess the best way to put it, that could possibly be a negative. Debbie Jacobs, have you heard of I'm sure we've all heard the horror stories, but more importantly, what should homeowners do to protect themselves from an overzealous HOA board?
Well, I think that one of the things that I always direct my buyers to really look at very carefully are the meeting minutes from past meetings. As Lori had mentioned, those meetings typically are completed once a month or maybe, every other month. And those meeting minutes really talk about the individual board of what they look at for the future. And in that meeting minutes, they typically will also say, well, this unit, 302 has got problems with dog barking or whatever. And that will give you the buyers a little bit of insight as to what type of personalities are on that board and what are maybe upcoming issues.
Dawn, what are your thoughts? I think you have a few on negatives or cons.
I agree with Debbie. Just be involved. Being involved from the beginning, even prior to buying the home, is reviewing all the documents and seeing if there's any red flags there. And in order to kind of abate the negative, just be involved. Go to your meetings. Know what's going on. You sometimes do have people, lots of strong personalities on the board. Most people on the board have really good intentions and they just want to make sure their community is preserved and maintained. But there are, of course, just like in life, some difficult personalities. I got involved. So I get involved, be involved. Some of the negatives, I had something happen recently. There's a house for sale in my neighborhood, and one of the neighbors has a catamaran on her property. And the gentleman who was selling his house called me and said, "Can't you make her move the catamaran?" I said, "Well, did you review the CC&Rs?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, they're on the website." No, she doesn't have to remove the catamaran. We have 10-acre parcels, and people can have their catamarans, they can have their horse trailers, they can have their RVs. So again, that was his mistake and not knowing what you were able to have. I think what it is people assume if there's an HOA that we're kind of the bulldogs and we'll go and enforce for them as the board, but I think they just don't realize what it covers. And a lot of HOAs won't let you have that, but this particular HOA, we have 10 acres, so folks are allowed to have their mountain toys, etc. here.
So Debbie Haining, one of the things that I think, we heard about our assessments, it obviously surprise assessments could also be an issue with HOAs, correct?
Correct. And that's why I think that understanding all of the HOA documents before you buy a house, you want to make sure that their reserves are strong. If something comes up and they don't have enough money, then of course it's going to fall back on the homeowners with a special assessment. And that's not something anybody wants. So,
yeah.
understanding that before.
So people have been, a lot of times you might see an HOA undercharge annually and then have to replace the roof and do that special assessment, which could be expensive, right?
Right. That's correct.
I think the important thing to note here, Rick, is that in Colorado, the home buyer does have the right to review all the documents, as everybody's mentioned. It is a contingency of the contract. So before they get involved and actually execute that, if they're reviewing the documents and if there's anything that they're not comfortable with, they have the right to terminate and get their earnest money back. So we do have that protection here in Colorado that gives the buyers a peace of mind that they have that out so they can review all those meeting minutes, covenants, as everybody said before.
And what part of the process is that? Which inspection? Is it inspections? Which objection is it?
So actually it's its own separate objection.
Okay.
A lot of times what I tell my clients is if you have something that's a deal breaker, say I have 4 dogs and I need to have all 4 of my dogs, I'd say let's get that figured out ahead of time before we make a contract and get under contract with the seller if you have a deal breaker like that. Because there's nothing worse than getting under contract, finding out that the covenants don't allow that. Now, if it's something, otherwise, if there's nothing in particular on the onset, it is getting under contract, and then it is a contingency as part of the due diligence documents that the seller will provide you, along with all those meeting minutes, bylaws, covenants that we've mentioned.
Laura, do you have any thoughts?
I think one of the pros can also be that there's a delay. Let's say homeowners have a roof issue or something, because it has to be approved by, we have 5 board members in my neighborhood. It can be a little bit of a cumbersome process versus if you just handled your own roof, for example. So that is kind of a negative. And then the other thing I would encourage definitely homeowners or potential buyers to try to get involved. Well, new buyers, not necessarily, but homeowners get involved. And especially at the end of the year when they're coming up with the budgeting for the following year, like in November, the other con could be that not everybody agrees what the funds or the monies are going to go towards. Are they going to go towards new lighting to keep up the look of the neighborhood? Or are they going to repair streets? I mean, there's just so many discussions. So I think the more input that the homeowners actually have, and if they can't attend the meetings, at least talk to a board member to be considered and have their voice heard, is a good way of combating that.
And it seems like, obviously, you're losing control. Some sense of control over your property. You're giving up that control, whether it's paint colors, whether it's how high your fence is, whether you have a fence at all. I've heard some communities don't allow you to put in a back fence. You can put in, a low fence, but not a high fence. So if those things are of interest to you or important to you, obviously you want to make sure that you really read those documents. And then in Florida, obviously they had the issue where they weren't doing any of the maintenance issues, and so they passed a law, and they basically said, now you need to put it and get those assessments every year for the new roof or inspections or things like that. Maybe it's the foundation. And we haven't gone that far yet this year, but I think it's important to keep in mind that if they didn't do it up to this point and it needs to be done next year, you could have a healthy assessment, I'm assuming. So that would be where you might want to ask some questions, right?
And to speak to that, so this did impact, the Florida incident did impact our Colorado HOAs. So I'm also on the board for this home that we're currently in, and then our previous 2 homes, I've also been on the HOA board. And so because of the law that came into effect in Florida, one of the things that's happened is that the reserves have to be a certain percentage of what they expect the annual maintenance to be and some other cost. And what has also happened is that the HOA insurance has went up. Ours here in the community that I live in went up 35% this last year. And so the special assessments have been much more common, I think, this last year. And I think probably everybody will agree with that. And especially in the high-rise condominiums, where I sold a property last year and the HOA I think was $625, and this year that same property has a HOA of $978. Mm-hmm. And again, this is a 16-story building, and so they're having to really come back through and get those assessments and figure out, how to get that reserves up to speed. Another piece is that there is an insurance policy that if you are going into an HOA community, there is a special homeowners insurance policy rider that I would invite buyers to look into.
HO6 gap insurance. I would recommend that as well. I think it pays or covers up to $50,000 worth of an assessment. And I definitely just want to piggyback off of what Debbie Jacobs said, in that property insurance has been a huge issue for single families as well as attached dwellings. But I think the attached dwelling neighborhoods really are feeling it more because, well, it's good news, bad news. It's shared by all, but then everyone, they just, yeah, we had the same thing. We had the first assessment ever in the history of the neighborhood because of the property insurance. So I think it's a number of things, the natural disasters, the fires we had in Superior, the Florida thing. And I was just going to say, if the reserves are healthy, that's a good thing. But I think that one thing a new potential buyer needs to look at is, do they have like someone in charge of escrowing for those types of things like roofs down the road? Because that, if they're not, then they're reactive and not proactive.
And you could potentially have somebody who might make off with parts of those funds. And so if they're not escrowed properly, it probably is good to have them look into that. And it sounds like HOAs are controlled by their boards. And if you're not happy, should you get involved? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Rick, to play off of what Lori and Debbie said, we're supposed to have reserve studies. And I believe the reserve studies are, I believe, every 5 years. I would have to check with my treasurer. But and that will just project any like major improvements, like our community, it would be the roads and repairs on the roads and resealing. And so when I came into our community 6 years ago, I realized the HOA, the dues hadn't been raised in, I don't know, 10 years. Well, that doesn't keep abreast of inflation and increased costs for services and goods. So I brought that to the board that we needed to up our dues. Well, that wasn't met very well, and we did it gradually. But if it's an annual, let's say, like cost of living increase, then it's not as bad as a hit. But going from like 600 to 900, that is a huge hit. But who knows what the reason was? But just keeping abreast of the increased cost is so important. And what I'm seeing again with the attached homes, I don't know if you ladies have seen that. A lot of the roofs aren't being covered. So I've noticed that a lot. And that's the first question I have my buyers ask when they shop around for insurance with an attached property is, are the roofs covered?
It's rare. I think it's rare that they are covered. And I think that is a very good question because that's a huge expense.
That's usually where I'm hearing the horror stories of assessments, or where they're being asked to pony up $5,000-$8,000, and these are people that are just about to leave. They want to sell their home, and now the new buyer is potentially being asked for that. So either the seller's going to have to pay that in advance. So just be careful, I guess, is the best way within the HOAs. But I think it's good that, we have this discussion. We'll probably continue it a little bit later at another one, because I think it's an interesting topic. Our first home for sale is being represented by Debbie Haining, and it's up in Aurora, out on the east side. Hi, Debbie, tell us a little bit about this property.
So this property is in the Waterstone area. If you're not familiar with it, it is near Murphy Creek, very close to the golf course. It is a little over 4,000 square feet, and it has 6 bedrooms and 5 baths. It's one of the few homes in the area that does have a finished basement. And I think that they've done just an amazing job with this home. It's only 3 years old, and it's listed right now at $779,000. Come take a look.
It's awesome. I see the coffered ceiling here in the primary suite. That's pretty amazing. It's got a lot of really, it's very updated. How old is it?
3 years old.
How old? Sorry.
3.
3 years old. So it's a newer home. So you got some of the landscaping in, and don't have to pay for that.
And I should mention that it's right across the street from a park.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. And let's see, whose is this one? This is Debbie
This is
Jacobs,
mine.
right? Yeah.
Yes. So
And
the reason
actually, Debbie, let me start with this. I'll lead into this. And the next home is a listing that Debbie Jacobs has, and it's out on East Dartmouth. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Well, thank you for starting at the community overlook, because this is a pocket neighborhood, meaning that most even agents, seasoned agents, don't know about this neighborhood. It's very close to Hamden and I-25. It is located in Denver. It has a 7-acre park on the interior, and it is a circle of 102 custom homes.
That's cool.
So it is really, really cool. It has 2 ponds, a stream, a park. It sits on the park. So off the patio, you're sitting right next to the pond, which is an amazing experience. And during the morning, if you open up the windows, the pond sound and the fountain sound is all the way through the home. This is a custom home, as I'd mentioned. It has a little over 3,800 square feet, 1854 on the main floor. It is a 2-bedroom, 1 bath on the main floor, and 2-bedroom and 2 bath on the main floor, and 2 bedrooms and 1 bath on the finished basement. Anyway, I'd love for you to come and see it, check it out. The neighborhood is called Gun Club Green. It used to be a property that was actually owned by the Denver water community, and then a custom home builder came in and purchased the property. And most of these homes are built in the early 80s, like 1981 for this particular property.
Well, great. Thanks. And the next home is Carrie's up in, looks like it's a townhome or a condo.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for showcasing this listing. So this is 1225 Prospect, Unit R35. You are correct. This is a condo. It's a efficient 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo on the main floor. It does come with all the appliances, including washer, dryer. It's totally been renovated, all new flooring, paint. Kitchen has been renovated as well. We've got some great quartz cabinets, quartz countertops in there. The one thing definitely to highlight on this is the location is ideal. You are literally steps to the college, so Colorado State University, next to bus line, close proximity to groceries and dining. So this would be a great opportunity for an investor, somebody purchasing for a child to go to college, or just even an individual looking for that accessibility there on that main floor.
And last, we have one that Dawn is representing up in Conifer.
Gorgeous home. It's very quintessential mountain Colorado. It has amazing views. We've got views of Mount Rosalie and Mount Blue Sky, along with many others in the distance. There are 4 decks, and you can take in the views from all of the decks. This house is immaculately maintained. These folks have been there for 12 or 13 years, and they're sad to leave, but they have to leave. We're in another state. It is a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, just shy of 3,000 square foot finished. It's on over 2 acres, and it's just a beautiful, peaceful property. The upper level is the entire primary suite, and it has a sitting area that is currently used as off a home office. There it also has a deck, as you can see right off of the primary. The bathrooms have been redone on the upper level, and it's just a gorgeous home. It's super peaceful. And the good thing about it is you're very remote, or it seems like you're remote, but 5 minutes down the road, you're on 285. So you get the best of both worlds.
Well, that's awesome. These are all great properties this week, yet again. Well, thanks everyone for being here today, and I appreciate all the comments you had with us today, and I think it was a good discussion. And if you want to get a hold of any of these agents, I'm sure they'd love to talk to you about your needs. They don't want to interfere with your current relationship, but if you're not currently talking with somebody and have some more questions, feel free to reach out to any of these ladies, and I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you on a one-on-one basis. Thanks again.